About a decade ago, Judy and I had been in the St. Stephen's Church for about 3 or 4 years, and we met John Powers at a coffee hour. I looked around at that coffee hour, and I'd met John Wall recently, and I'd met Ward Lahardy recently, and I realized of the 30 men in that coffee hour, 3 of them were generals. How many churches have 10% of their coffee hour generals? Maybe at West Point or someplace, I don't know. But aren't coffee hours a wonderful place to meet people? We just had a great time with John over the years there, and he did so many of the coffee hours himself. I would like to share a couple of things with you about John that you know already, most of you would know, but I want to share a couple of things with you too that you might not know. John had hopes for the here and now, but he also had hopes for his future eternal life. John hoped to build a sense of family within the congregation by preparing that sit-down lunch that Ernie was talking about at noon on Wednesdays. He did this at his own expense as a gift to the people. And Bill worked side by side with him for most of these affairs, and that helped to build a real strong bond between the two of them, too. John hoped to represent the church well to the community. He did this by baking cookies and taking them out to the community and telling people about his faith and his life at Light of Christ Church. He would take them to the courthouse, and someone asked me this morning, was he bribing Todd Thomas? Thank you for coming, Todd. And my conclusion was, no, he really did want to build a sense of community. And I don't think his house assessment went down any, did it, Todd? Good. John came to fishermen with the hope of learning more about Jesus and the opportunity to pray for those around him, which he did with a true heart. After Walt T. Strake involved John in the Kairos ministry, one of John's goals was to bring hope to the men incarcerated in Buckingham Prison. When I learned that John was a licensed pilot, I took him flying a few times, quite a few times, because I thought, well, he's a licensed pilot, but he hasn't flown for 20 or 25 years, and I can show him a thing or two. I was nuts. He showed me a thing or two. He was so smooth at those controls. I mean, he was like a senior pilot instructor. And so on Thursdays sometimes, after he had done his deal on Wednesdays at the church, I would give him a little gift of a flight over to the Eastern Shore for lunch at my expense, since he wouldn't take any money from me. And he would fly all the way over and all the way back just as happy as anyone. And he taught me some things, not only about flying, but about living. We had some great discussions over there in places like Cambridge, Maryland, Eastern Maryland, Georgetown, Delaware, and we just had great times. That's when I found out that he had purchased a kit to construct a small plane. This is probably something a lot of you didn't know. Randy knows up in the tower up there because he's helped him some with it, but that's one of the hopes that John did not realize, the hope of completing that small plane and flying in it. He had turned to so many of his other hopes and given priorities to so many other places that that one just couldn't be finished. John's final hope of eternity with Jesus is even now being realized, and I can picture him doing some loops and barrel rolls in a little plane just made for him. Have you reviewed your hopes lately?